In lesson 3, we're going to look at interval notation. And basically what this is, it's a way of representing our answers and representing a solution. It involves two types of brackets. You can read up here, square brackets are used to represent a closed interval that includes the end values of the interval. So again, square brackets include the end values. Round brackets represent an open interval for which the end values are not included. So if you remember back, you've seen this before a while ago where you have the open circles and the closed circles. Remember, open circles mean that that point is not included, whereas the closed circles here, that point is included. So if we take a look at the first one, AB, we know that these points are not included, and therefore we've got to use the round brackets. And we would just say our solution is from A to B. In the second one, obviously we're using the square brackets because those points are definitely included. And you can keep going. We can use combinations of them where we've got a closed bracket and then we've got an open bracket. Same thing, open bracket, closed bracket. Here, if it continues to go on forever, okay, so I've got A, and then it's going upwards onto infinity. We all know infinity doesn't really exist, right? So obviously we would use an open bracket here for the A, and that would go all the way up to infinity, which has to be an open bracket, again, because that's not a specific point that we can specify. Here with a closed bracket, and then again all the way up to infinity with the open. So just a little bit of practice with some numbers here. I've got my -3. So again, closed bracket all the way up. So that would be -3 up to infinity. Same thing here. I'm going from +1 down to infinity. So we always read from left to right. So that's going to be negative infinity up to 1, which is going to be a closed bracket. This one, 5, a closed bracket for 5, up to infinity, which is an open one. And then the last couple here, again, deal with the variables. So this is our B value, which again we know is going to be an open bracket. But reading from left to right, we can see that we're all the way from negative infinity up to B, again, and all those are going to be open brackets. Again, closed bracket for B, all the way down to negative infinity. So negative infinity up to B with a closed bracket. This last one that includes everything, okay, basically from negative infinity up to positive infinity, open brackets for both. And that would be, again, just how to represent that solution set. We are going to use this definitely later on when we get into limits and we get into representing graphs and that kind of stuff. So you are going to see these symbols quite a bit. Number 13, it says write each of the following inequality statements in interval notation. So if I take a look at what this statement means, -5 up to 8. And x is in between those. So that means my solution is in between -5 and 8. And what you have to do is look at those inequalities. Now they are greater than, these are less than inequality signs. And that means that they're not equal to. So that must mean that we have to have our open brackets at each of those points. So therefore we would represent that -5 up to 8. This next one, x is greater than or equal to 2. So where 2 is, we know now we've got a closed point, and x is greater than that, so we've got our grid looking like this. And again, closed bracket for 2, all the way up to positive infinity. A combination of 2 or more intervals can be indicated using, it's like a U symbol, which represents the union of the intervals. And this basically includes all the solutions. So if we look at this at one example here, I've got x is less than 1. So if that's my 1, I know if x is less than that, I've got an open circle at 1 going down, or x is greater than or equal to 10. So it can be greater than or equal to 10. So it's going to look something like this. Now, how would I represent this as my interval, as these little brackets that we've been using, same thing as before. I've basically got my negative infinity, which I know is going to be an open bracket, up to 1, which still has to be an open bracket. And then I'm going to use that union symbol up to that 10, which is closed bracket, up to infinity, which would be an open bracket. So we're just basically doing a combination of things here. Next one is the same idea. X is less than negative 1. So I know I have an open circle at negative 1, and we're going down. Or X is in between 0 and 10. So if this is my 0, this is my 10. X is in between them, and I know it can be equal, so I've got closed circles there as well. Now again, if I want to represent this, negative infinity up to negative 1, all open brackets, union, closed bracket with 0, 10, and then another closed bracket. If we look at E, again, just a little bit more practice. I'll keep going through this. Remember, you can always pause me and do them yourself and then just double check your answer once I'm done with them. So X is less than 7 or equal to that situation. We've got X is in between 12 and 15. So in between these, obviously open circle here, closed circle here, negative infinity up to 7, union, open bracket at 12, up to 15, which would be a closed bracket. X cannot be equal to 0. So that basically means I've got everything except for 0. We have to have an open circle at 0. So I have to do that in two parts, basically negative infinity up to 0, but not including union, 0 up to infinity. So again, we can just break that up. Next one is, again, just kind of working a little bit backwards, and then that's going to be it for this little lesson. Write an expression that represents the values of the following number lines. So again, just pay attention, guys, to those closed circles and open circles. So this one's a closed one, so we know that we've got, it can be equal to 3. So if I want to do that in different ways, I've got negative 3, and then all the way up to infinity. It also says write an expression, so we want to use an inequality here. We basically know that x has to be bigger than or equal to negative 3. So x needs to be greater than or equal to negative 3. For the next one, negative infinity up to 0 and including 0. So closed bracket at 0. Also, x has to be greater than 5, but not equal to. So we are not including 5 all the way up to infinity. So in order to do that as an equation, or sorry, as an expression, x has to be less than or equal to 0. And also, x has to be greater than, but not equal to 5. All right, so let's take a look at C here. This is our last one. X belongs to everything except it cannot be equal to 9. So again, we would have to write that negative infinity up to 9, but not including, union, 9 up to infinity, but again, not including any of those. How would we write that as an inequality? Basically, x can belong to anything or be equal to anything, but not 9. And that's how we would finish that off. Okay, guys, so you can do a little bit of practice, check your answers, and check out the next lesson.